Native legends you might not know, and buckle up because this is a dark one. This is the legend of Walking Sam. This is a very dark and sinister spirit that, in my opinion, is very similar to another entity known as the Hat Man, which is for another video, but they seem to be very similar in appearance, such as being tall and dark as midnight, extremely thin, and wearing a top hat. What makes Walking Sam different is when he raises his arms, you can see that he carries the souls of the men and women who have fallen victim to him. His eerie whistling can be heard deep in the woods or sometimes in very unlit areas as a warning sign, and that's how he gets into his victims' heads. Once he does, many say they hear voices and whispers in their heads, making them feel worthless and unable to bear the hardships of life. Due to the horrible living conditions or circumstances, such as generational trauma, that the natives go through, it is he who targets them and are more impressionable, and some eventually give in to that dark calling, giving him another victim to add to his coat. The elders would always tell us to always take care of one another and to check in with each other to make sure that the evil and dark spirits never have a reason to visit. That's why community and family are very important, or even doing something that makes you happy, like taking care of yourself and your mental health, which is very important. So, if you want to join the community here and learn more about Walking Sam and other native legends, be sure to join my YouTube and podcast at Sacred Cree. Take care.
Did you want to know more about Hawaiian paranormal history? I got you. If for whatever reason you decide to go to Hawaii and you find a rock that you really like and you want to take it home to remember your trip by, and all of a sudden you can't find the rock, and you start asking everybody around, like, where's my rock? And everybody will say, I don't know, I didn't see it. Oh yeah, we saw the rock, and more than likely we threw that shit right the fuck back from where you picked it up from. And there's reasons for this. First thing is you don't steal shit from Madame Pele. Madame Pele is our goddess of lava and volcanoes, and she doesn't take too kindly to people stealing shit from her. This leads me into my second reason. We are trying to help you because stealing from Madame Pele is bad. A lifetime of bad luck until you put the rock back from where you got it. An entire lifetime of her haunting your dreams every single night until you place the rock back where you found it. We're not talking about the rocks today. We are talking about Madame Pele because she is very prominent where I come from. This little strip of road right here that runs from Kamuela or Waimea all the way to my hometown up north called North Kohala, Hawaii, is called Kohala Mountain Road. This road is home to a phenomena known as the lady with the white hair. Now, the lady with the white hair is always described as an elderly woman with white hair, and she's always walking a small dog on Kohala Mountain Road. Now, the mountain road is just that. It's a road that runs through the mountains. There's nothing up there except for maybe one or two houses. It's extremely cold, and it's about 30 miles long. When you come across the lady with the white hair walking on Kohala Mountain Road, you stop and you pick her up. One, it's the decent human thing to do. Everyone does it, no matter who is catching ride on Kohala Mountain Road. And two, everyone knows that's Madame Pele. There are many stories of people picking her up, but all of them seem to follow. They pick her up and they drive her to either Kamuela or Kohala, and she converses with them in Hawaiian. Now, whether they speak Hawaiian or not, they can understand her, and when they respond in English, she seems to understand them. The conversation slowly gets less and less frequent until it stops altogether before they get to either Kamuela or Kohala, and when they look, she's gone. There is one story, however, that everyone knows. It's in books, it's on the internet. Everyone knows this story. You can look it up and read about it right now if you wanted to. It's the story of how two men picked her up in a truck, and as they were driving and talking to her, she just stopped talking and started staring straight ahead. If you have ever driven on this road, you know that taking a turn is blind. You don't know what's coming around after that corner. So Madame Pele was staring straight ahead while they were coming across another turn. And right before they took that turn, she said in English, "Stop the car." Well, they stopped the car almost immediately before they take the turn. And they start creeping around the turn. And there is a big ass fucking tree just slap down in the middle of the road. And if they were going as fast as they were, which is about, the speed limit's like 45, but people go like 50. If they were going that fast, they would have died. And when they finally turned around to say thanks and ask how she knew about it, she was just gone. Madame Pele wasn't there anymore. No matter who you are in Hawaii, if you have Hawaiian blood, you know and you respect Madame Pele. No matter what your religious beliefs are, everyone knows about Madame Pele and everyone respects Madame Pele. That's the reason no one in Hawaii tolerates any disrespect to Madame Pele, because she is there for us and we don't steal shit from her, because I'm not trying to see Madame Pele in my dreams because I'm terrified of her.
You don't know how wrong you are, friend, but by the end of this video, you might just wish Utah was boring. And the paranormal activity is far from limited to Skinwalker Ranch, so I won't even touch on that one. Located in the Beaver Dam Mountains is a pipe known as the Voodoo Caves. According to local lore, practitioners of dark magic went into this pipe and did countless evil rituals, leaving behind a negative energy that still lingers today. This evil energy curses or takes the life of anybody who enters. It is said that if anybody in the cave makes disparaging remarks about Satan or the other entity that lives there, they will find themselves suddenly trapped by rising water. It is said that this malevolent force took the life of a construction worker who went down into the pipe one day to remove a clog. At some point, he got pinned down and drowned. Kays Cross, or what remains of it, is located in Kaysville, Utah. The cross you see here was reduced to rubble in 1992, but stories of the hauntings and other strange happenings still persist today. According to legend, a polygamist who lived on the land the cross is on killed 7 of his wives and buried 6 of them around the cross. One he buried standing upright, and he encased her heart in the center of the cross and then took his own life. There are plenty of rumors that say Satanists use the cross as their altar for satanic sacrifices. The cross was originally built in honor of Krishna Venta, who was a religious cult leader. The large K at the top stood for kingdom, which was a word that Venta used a lot in his speeches. February 15, 1992, a mysterious blast left the cross in rubble. No arrest was ever made in the destruction of the cross, but people have their theories. Legends about Kays Cross are rampant, from dogmen running around in the night to spousal murder to the satanic rituals I mentioned before. The cross is on private property today, so if you do plan to go, please get permission first. And I'll be doing another video on Venta Krishna because his life and connection to Charles Manson is absolutely bonkers. Next we have Lily E. Gray, who was buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. It is a mystery why she has Victim of the Beast 666 on her headstone, but there are a few theories. Lily was from Canada and was survived by her husband, Elmer L. Gray. Some believe he wrote this on her headstone as a message to the government. He was erratic, paranoid, and very anti-government, and he believed that the government had kidnapped and killed Lily. Other theories are that Lily herself was a Satanist, or she was somehow sacrificed to Satan, or even that she was another innocent woman accused of witchcraft. Yet another theory is that she died on Utah's Highway 666, which is infamously dangerous. And last but certainly not least, we have the ghost of Moon Lake. Campers at Moon Lake have reported hearing screams and splashing in the water, but when they go to investigate, they don't see anything. According to legend, these campers are hearing the ghost of a little girl who died in the lake years ago and now haunts it. Some campers have even heard her during the day, saying that they hear the sobs of a child when no children are around, or they hear splashing in the water when the campgrounds are empty. Although the story is very creepy, it is not believed that the ghost tried to drown anybody else. Yet.
Thank you for bringing this up because I am so stoked to talk about it. This is the Ursuline Convent in New Orleans, and legend has it that this attic is home to bloodsuckers. As many of you know, the founders of New Orleans were mostly French tradesmen and explorers, and primarily men. Because of there being so few women, the colonizers reached out to King Louis to help them out. The king resolved this by sending girls and young women from convents and orphanages to New Orleans for marriage. It's said that these women were pale and gaunt and each carried a coffin-like suitcase much like this, earning these young women the name the Casket Girls. Now supposedly as soon as these women arrived, the mortality rate in New Orleans went up, especially the infant mortality rate. This caused the convent nuns to reach out to the archdiocese. After an investigation, the caskets were taken to the attic of the convent and sealed by 800 nails individually blessed by the Pope. Rumors started swirling that vampires had been smuggled into New Orleans, and many passerbys have claimed to see these shutters fly open on misty nights. I didn't have time, but I'll definitely be doing a part 2 about the paranormal investigators who lost their lives investigating this place. Casket Girls, Part 2. I know we left off in the 1700s with the Pope sealing off the 3rd floor of the convent with the caskets inside. And over the next 2 centuries, many people claim to have seen these shutters fly open. In 1978, 2 paranormal investigators came to the Ursuline Convent to monitor it for any activity. They had already been kicked off the property earlier for loitering, but still decided to stay the night. They were determined to find out if the rumors of bloodsuckers living in the convent attic were true, and they unfortunately did. The investigators set up cameras that faced the convent, and they settled in for a long night. Time ticked by, and while watching the shutters of the attic, they eventually fell asleep. And while sleeping, they failed to see the attic shutters opening and closing. The camera suddenly stopped filming and the tape went black. The next morning, their bodies were found on the footsteps of St. Mary's. Their flesh had been torn open and their bodies had been completely drained of blood. The bloodsuckers of the French Quarter had claimed 2 more victims. I will be doing more of these, so please let me know what lore and stories you want to hear in the comments.
Let's talk about the creepy urban legend of the Idaho water babies at Massacre Rocks State Park. Now, Massacre Rock State Park is known for being a major part of the Oregon Trail, and settlers from the east passed through this state park on their journey westward. And today it is a very popular destination for people to stop and look at the history and the beautiful park. But this area is extremely known to be haunted by the Idaho water babies. And the popular belief is that the Native Americans that lived there went through a harsh famine, and some of them weren't able to eat for weeks, y'all. Like, the natives decided that there wasn't enough food to feed any more people. And mothers were forced to go down to the river and basically their own babies, because they really just could not face the fact that their children were starving, or that that's what their children would be born into. So they would go their own kids in the water. But it was said after they were drowned that they changed in a way, like they grew fins, and in order to survive, they ate little fish. So some rumors are that they just adapted and became kind of like these like sea creatures. And others just think that these are the spirits of the babies that were, And it has been rumors of people hearing these babies cry all night, or just seeing these little creatures everywhere at nighttime. And it is said that the spirits will try to lure humans to their deaths in order to avenge their sad fates. But it's said if you go down the riverbanks, y'all, you may hear the sound of a baby crying for his mother. So I would be careful if I was you. So let me know if y'all ever heard of this legend, because I find that really crazy. And there has been a lot of people that has reported hearing or seeing these little creatures.
One of the spookiest folk tales of the Native American people that my wife taught me. If you guys didn't know it, my wife is Native American. And this one is just one that she absolutely does not like to talk about. Like many Native American traditions and folk tales, you are not supposed to talk about these things, so I will not be using the name. You guys are probably very familiar, if you live in the Oklahoma area, with Little. I'm not going to say that full word out loud. The LPs, as I like to call them. For people who are white like myself, we cannot physically see them most of the time. And this gives me chills to even say this out loud, because I've been seeing these for years. And when I found this out for my wife, I realized what I'd been seeing. To white people like us, they look like blue firefly lights. Like, you know how like lightning bugs are like yellow and like an orangish color? The LPs appear as blue lights, or what in Appalachia they call the fey lights, the fairy lights. So if you're seeing blue lights around your property dotting around, that could be the LPs pretty active, and you really shouldn't change a whole lot about that area if they're in. Like if you see it around a thing of trees or something, you should never cut those trees down. Now, these stories vary from tribe to tribe, from people to people, on like how you should interact with them, what you should do around them, how to keep peace with them. Some people believe that you should leave candies out. Some people believe you should leave trinkets. Some believe you should ignore that they're there at all. But essentially, on the mild side, they're tricksters. On the extreme side, they are holy terrors that will abduct your children. So from what I've been told from her and other Native Americans in the area, you really don't have to worry about them too much as far as being a grown adult, besides just your stuff go missing or your tools get misplaced, which I've got ADHD. Maybe I'm misplacing my tools, but my tools go missing all the time. And it could be the neighborhood crackheads. Who knows? But they all pretty much believe that you should not talk about them openly and use their full name. Okay, and I'm not going to say their traditional name. Calling them the LP, the little, is still the whitewashed way of saying it, but that's the best way that I know how to describe them and what they're most commonly known as in this area. And I literally it almost makes me sick to talk about these stories that I've heard from like people I personally know, followers on this page, other Native Americans in this area that have told me their stories with the LPs. And one of the most chilling ones is this woman says that she strongly remembers when she was a child, the children in the woods behind her property would want her to come out and play only when it rained. Now, that's a pretty unique part of the story, because if you know a lot about Native American beliefs, there's a lot of power held in waters, and spirit travels through waters, things like that. So that would make sense of when it was raining is the only time they really saw and interacted with these things. And her mother and grandmother would just never allow her to go outside when it rained, because she would always talk about, I'm excited for when it rains again because I get to see the little girls again that live in the woods behind our house. That story just gives me absolute chills to think about. So what I've heard is that they're very curious, okay? So we, own a wildlife facility, and when we moved out here roughly 5 years ago, we started adding a bunch of new animals. We started building structures to what was just pretty much an empty cow pasture overgrown with berry bushes, which is a nice place for the LPs to live, by the way, if you guys didn't know that. And I would come out here at night, and I would always see these blue, like what I just thought were fireflies. I just thought there was like a variant of fireflies I've never seen before. And I would just never really say anything about it. And one night I talked to my wife about it because we were laying in bed, and I was like, oh, I accidentally let one of those fireflies in because I could see a blue twinkling light going through the room, and it was going into our closet. And my wife absolutely just flipped out. She was like, you saw what? And I was like, yeah, it was a blue light just, kind of around the bed, and it went to the floor, and it went into the closet. And I was like, after she explained that to me, I was like, oh, that explains why I didn't see it floating way up in the air like you would see a firefly. It was close to the ground, because to somebody who could see it, it would have been, one of the LPs, but all I can see is the blue flickering light. And it always creeps me out when I see these lights, because like to this day, if you guys come and visit our facility, look on the roof of the pole barn where the yak is. There's a hatchet up there. I have no idea how my hatchet got onto that roof, but I couldn't find it for weeks, and it's on the roof of that pole barn, and I just left it because that's my trinket to them. You can just have it. Here's one of our Timberwolves, Scotty. She's a good girl, isn't she, Scotty? Good girl. So if you live out in the country and you've experienced these fey lights or fairy lights, or the experiences of the LPs, you might often hear disembodied music that, you can't place where it's coming from, and it's just low. You can barely hear it. You're never supposed to follow the sound of that music. And then also you might hear whispering or talking. Maybe it's in a language you don't quite understand, or it's just like whispering that you can't really make out, or it sounds like gibberish. I've had that experience a few times out here. But if you spend more than 24 hours away with them, you can never come back. And that's why there's a lot of stories about missing children. Now, this could be a folklore about, back in the day, Native Americans not wanting their children to go play out in the woods or play too far away from the group. But it also could explain, if you look into the missing 401 phenomenon, how many children go missing in national parks. It's extremely alarming. And those kids that sometimes do get found, the tales these say, like you can go look up real accounts of the missing 411 kids that have been found. If you don't know what the missing 411 is, it is just this crazy phenomenon where people just disappear without a single trace. Oftentimes they are found at a much later date, and it just does not make sense on how they went missing, where they were found at, where they went missing at, etc. But the stories these kids will talk about, like while they were gone or missing, is they heard music playing, or another person wanted them to come play with them, and a little child. And they might be saying it's a little child when actually it was just a small, an LP. And they wanted them to go play with them, and then they got lost and confused, and the next thing they knew, they were in a world that wasn't quite ours, but it wasn't quite an alien world either. It was like ours, but just different. You hear this described in a lot of different cultures. In fact, almost every culture around the world has a story of an LP, which is kind of odd. You look in Ireland, they have leprechauns. You look at Appalachian, they have the borrowers. Here in the Midwest, in the South, they have the LP. And you talk about, if you go down to Mexico and South America, their LPs are actually incredibly vicious and brutal. The stories of LPs down there are insane. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's videos. If you like different Oklahoma folklore and stuff like that, be sure to give us a follow. We like to have fun with these. Don't take it too serious. People get really heated in this comments going, oh, that's not real. It's just like, hey guys, let's keep an open mind. Okay, let's not be ignorant. And I'm a religious man myself, but the people who get me the most heated in these comments are these Bible thumpers that just say, that story can't be real because of the name of Jesus or whatever. Like, I'm religious, okay? I get it. But if you believe the Bible, you also believe a lot of crazy supernatural stories as well. Don't act like it ain't true.
In the mid-1800s, the Laguerre family was visiting family on the Edisto Island. During their visit, their daughter Julia became ill and fell into a coma. Her family anxiously waited for the day that she would wake up, but that day never came. Back in the 1800s, they didn't have embalming fluid to preserve the body before burial, so Julia was buried the same day that she was pronounced dead. And she was placed in their family mausoleum. And then about 15 years later, another member of their family passed away. So the mausoleum was opened, and that's when they found Julia's remains outside of her coffin. So the legend says that her heart rate and her respirations were so low that the doctor couldn't detect them, which resulted in her being buried alive inside this tomb. Julia's remains were properly placed back in the tomb, and the family all came to pay their respects. When they got there, they noticed that the door was left open. Thinking that it was just not properly latched, they closed the door again, and then later a maintenance man came back and the door was wide open. This happened again and again for the next few decades. They even tried chains and padlocks to keep the door shut, but nothing worked. And people believe that this is the spirit of Julia opening the door because she doesn't want to be locked in the tomb any longer.
If someone offered to help you freeze some of your family members to help you save money in the winter, would you do it? This is the urban legend of the Frozen Hill people. This took place in northern Vermont, and the story was recounted by a man named Albert Stevens. There were newspaper articles about it, and the people who were frozen were put into a frozen death, which was like a suspended animation. People who would be frozen were the ones that were deemed unuseful during those times. Started out where these 6 people were laying on the floor unconscious in a cabin, and then people were kind of looking over them and said they're ready. So when they did that, they took off all of their clothing and then took them outside to a stack of logs and left them there to freeze. This was also during a full moon. After a while, the nose, the ears, the fingers, everything started to turn white, and they were freezing fast. They then created a giant box that they had filled with straw, and they moved the frozen people's bodies into this box. They then nailed the box shut with pieces of wood to prevent any animals from breaking into this box, and then they covered the box with spruce and hemlock. After witnessing all of this, Albert was told, come back May 10th and you can watch them be thawed. And you bet Albert was like, I'm not missing that. So he went there and then he reported back to us, of course. So when he was there in May, they took all of the bodies out of the box and laid them down on the melting snow. They then had these troughs that they would lay the people in, and there was room temperature water in the troughs already, that it was kind of flowing, and then they would take and they would pour boiling hot water on the end so that it would trickle and like run down the people. They said that there was so much hemlock in the water as they were thawing that it turned the color of wine. After about an hour, they were all starting to get color back, and so then the people who were there assisting then started to rub their bodies to try and create some warmth. About an hour after that, the people apparently just regained their consciousness and woke up, and they gave them a cup of alcohol to help warm their insides, and then they would wrap them up in a blanket, take them into the house, and given some food and other stuff, and said that they seemed perfectly fine. So would you do it? Or would you be one of the people that gets frozen?
So you're driving down a rural back road in South Carolina. The sun has gone down, your phone has no signal, and there's nothing but trees on both sides of you. You're just trying to get home when you see something across the road. It's fast, it's on 2 legs, and it's way too tall to be a person. Welcome back to Coffee and Cryptids. My name is Hannah, and I'm a girl that does both. I do makeup, fashion, beauty, hair, and talk about true crime and the weird side of the world. So I need to refresh my coffee because it's getting low. So this creature that I'm talking about, locals call it the Beast of Bay Road. And for decades, this creature has been blamed for vanishing animals, slashed tires, glowing eyes in the trees, and just the fear after dark that people have. So let's get into where Bay Road exactly is. So it runs through Bishopville, South Carolina. It's a place that's already known for like cryptid stories like the Lizard Man or the Scape of Orr Swamp. But around the early 2000s, something new started to show up that wasn't either of these things, and it was actually much bigger. Witnesses would describe this creature as being over 7 feet tall, covered in thick black or dark brown fur, with a body that moved like a man but snarled like a wild animal. People said it also had elongated arms, massive claws, and yellow or red glowing eyes that didn't reflect the light. They almost seemed to like have like a shine on their own, which is so creepy. And the weirdest part about all of this is it didn't just watch, it essentially like followed people, and multiple locals claimed that they were chased in their cars or that they saw it like standing on the road and then all of a sudden like vanishing, like just completely vanishing without a sound, like into the trees. One story specifically, there was a man that said he saw it crouched like beside a ditch, like almost like eating something, and then when the headlights hit it, it stood up and like almost like smiled. It was just very bizarre. There have been at least a dozen reported sightings over the years, though a lot of them do go unreported because obviously people are afraid of being laughed at. And just like any other cryptid, there's never really been a clear photo, but every single story that talks about this specific cryptid, it all matches up. Some people believe it's like a mutated bear. Others say it might be connected to the lizard man, or kind of like my other video, like a government experiment gone wrong. But the locals in the area, they will tell you this. Do not go driving down Bay Road after midnight. And if you do, keep your eyes on the trees. That's it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
This has got to be one of the creepiest urban legends I have ever heard of, and mainly because it might just be true. In the southwest corner of Vermont, situated around the Glastonbury Mountain and the surrounding towns including Bennington, is a roughly 100 square mile area of land known as the Bennington Triangle. And like the Bermuda, Alaska, and Bridgewater Triangle, the Bennington Triangle is full of tons of paranormal claims. Like monsters, Bigfoot, strange lights, strange noises, and even aliens and UFO encounters. But that's not the creepy part. The area that makes up the Bennington Triangle is said to be cursed. And a lot of people have gotten lost or injured or even worse while hiking, camping, or hunting in the Bennington Triangle. But between 1945 and 1950, there was a string of mysterious disappearances in the Bennington Triangle that still haunts the state of Vermont to this day. On December 1st, 1946, 18-year-old Paula Weldon was out for a hike. She was a student at Bennington College and she just needed to get some fresh air. And she was seen by a couple who was out hiking on the same trail, and they were about 100 yards behind her. And the couple claimed that they watched Weldon turn a corner, and when they rounded that same corner only a few moments later, she totally vanished. And exactly 1 year later, to the day, so December 1st, 1947, a 68-year-old military veteran completely vanished while on a bus. He was seen by his family boarding the bus to Bennington, which was his stop. And he was also seen on the bus at the previous stop before Bennington. And somewhere between the previous stop and Bennington, he completely vanished. And all of his belongings were still in his seat and his luggage was still in the rack, but he had disappeared without a trace. And in 1950, an 8-year-old boy vanished from the cab of his mother's truck while she stepped away for a couple minutes to run an errand. The police brought in bloodhounds to help locate the boy, and they managed to track his scent all through the woods till they completely lost it at a trail. The exact same trail Paula Weldon disappeared on 4 years earlier.
Every state has their legends. This one's Oregon's. We're going to talk about the Bandage Man. The Bandage Man is an urban legend that has been around since the 1950s, and this may have been a way to get young lovers to stop parking along Highway 101. The Bandage Man is supposedly a ghost of a logger who died in a grisly sawmill accident, and he likes to attack cars and terrorize teenagers, leaving bloody bandages, and his presence is predicted by the smell of rotting flesh. And he loves to knock on car windows and try to get in, and smells really, really bad. One story goes is that a young couple was parked in a truck somewhere along Cannon Beach. While they were getting all hot and heavy, they were absolutely oblivious that someone had crawled in the back of their truck. And after a pause, they looked in the rearview mirror, only to find a disfigured man covered in bandages rocking the truck back and forth. And the bandage man started pounding on the window and all over the truck as the boy pulled out of the overlook and started racing down the highway. The couple drove for miles with the bandage man still beating on the truck until he finally disappeared. Stories of the Bandage Man continue to plague Cannon Beach and that stretch of Highway 101, so if you find yourself in the area, make sure you have a getaway plan.
Want to hear a story? This story is going to take us to Erling, Iowa, and the terrifying story of the Erling exorcism. Erling is a little bitty city with a population of only around 400 people. It was first platted in 1882, and by 1892, St. Joseph's Catholic Church had been built. And shortly after, a schoolhouse and a convent for the Franciscan sisters of the parish was also built. And that convent became well known as the location of the 1928 historic exorcism that inspired the movie The Exorcist. This is a very strange story, and its detailed documentation makes it even more terrifying. In 1928, Father Reisinger arrived in Erling, and he paid a visit to his longtime friend, Reverend Joseph Steiger, the pastor of St. Joseph's. And Father Reisinger brought with him a strange request to transport a woman from Wisconsin that he believed was possessed by the devil to Erling to stay in the convent while he performed an exorcism. Reverend Steiger here was taken aback by the request, not only because why, but also because he harbored a secret fear of exorcisms and of demon possession. And the Reverend didn't really want to be around that kind of thing. But Father Reisinger, who had 19 exorcisms under his belt, explained that a 40-year-old woman, who he never named, had been under the observation of the church for several years. She'd had a normal, respectable, and pious early life. But around 14, unusual experiences started to manifest. Much as she wanted to pray and to go to church, she seemed in the clutches of some mysterious power that would not even allow her to say the name of Jesus Christ. And sinister inner voices kept suggesting disagreeable things to her and tried their utmost to arouse thoughts of the most shameful type within her and tried to induce her to do things unmentionable. He said the woman was in despair and thought she was going insane. She'd visited doctors who all said she was in good health, so she sought out the help of a priest who maintained a healthy amount of skepticism for a few years. But it had become evident to him that some type of supernatural powers were at play. The woman had become able to understand languages she'd never heard or read. And when the priest blessed her in Latin, she not only knew what he said, she also became enraged and foamed at the mouth. And she knew instantly if she was handed an object that had been secretly blessed, and showed great aversion to it, but could be handed any ordinary object and not react at all. Finally, the priest in her parish had contacted the bishop, who'd entrusted the case to Father Reisinger. He wanted to bring the woman to Erling in order to protect her identity, as her own town and people may not take kindly to someone who had been touched by evil. By taking her away and performing this exorcism secretly, once healed of her affliction, she could return home and live a normal life. And they did protect this woman's identity very carefully. Still today, no one knows who she actually was. Her name was recorded only as Mary X. And today she is thought to have been a woman named Anna Eklund, which some believe is another fake name for a woman named Emma Schmidt, but there's two Emma Schmidts she could have been. But either way, we will call her Anna since that's the name that's most commonly used. The reluctant Reverend agreed, as long as Father Reisinger managed to get the permission from the Mother Superior first, which the Reverend did not believe he would get. So he was unpleasantly surprised when the Father just smiled and said he already did. Anna traveled to Erling with an escort of priests, and though she was said to be happy for the church's help and more than willing to do the exorcism, she immediately attacked and tried to choke the priests who came to meet her. And once brought to her room in the convent, she immediately began to exhibit some terrifying behavior. She began howling and screaming like a wild animal and writhing around as if she were in agony. It was recorded by the priest that, quote, this ugly bellowing and howling took place every day, and at times it lasted hours. And that night, a well-meaning nun sprinkled Anna's food with holy water. But when it was brought to her room, Anna threw the tray in rage and refused to eat anything until new unblessed food was brought up to her. Father Reisinger immediately knew that Anna's case would require several attempts and that the exorcism would likely last some time. The first attempt began on the morning of August 18th. Father Reisinger, along with the Reverend, and a team of 2 other priests and 12 nuns, gathered in Anna's room. The sleeves of her gown were tied together so that she couldn't use her hands. The nuns held her braced to the bed, and as soon as the Father began, Anna fell unconscious and remained with her eyes and her mouth closed for the entire period of the first exorcism, which lasted 8 days, except on one horrifying occasion. Just as the Father invoked the Holy Trinity, quote, a hair-raising scene occurred. With lightning speed, the possessed dislodged herself from her bed and from the hands of her guards. Her body was carried through the air and landed high above the door of the room and clung to the wall with a tenacious grip. And it was recorded that real force had to be used in order to get her down. Throughout the rest of the exorcism, a terrible howling and screeching came from Anna, so loudly that the sound carried through the walls and closed windows of the convent into the neighborhoods, and people came running, thinking someone was being murdered inside the convent. Inside the room, Anna was twisting and writhing around on the bed, so violently that her body was distorted. The scene was too much even for the nuns, who had to take turns going outside for fresh air, and various voices emerged from Anna at different times. One identified itself as Beelzebub, not Lucifer the prince, but his chieftain. Another identified itself as Judas the betrayer, who claimed to be there to induce the woman to suicide. Another voice claimed to be the damned soul of Anna's own father, Jacob, who claimed to have cursed his daughter himself. With questioning, the voice revealed that he had lived a frightfully coarse and brutal life. He had been a vicious drunk and tried frequently to force himself on his daughter. And it was also revealed that during his marriage, while Anna's mother still lived, that he was known to be in a relationship with another woman named Mina, a supposedly known practitioner of dark magic. Her voice also appeared in the room, and claimed that she had put a hex on Anna in order to draw the demons to possess her. The voice of Mina was said to be especially hateful and spiteful, and while she was speaking, she would spit and vomit on the priests. As time passed between these exorcism attempts, many threats were made against the two fathers, but this devil that possessed Anna, interestingly, acted rather civilly towards the cooks and the nuns, never attacked any of them, only the priests. Most of the threats the priests ignored. Like once, one of the voices said to Father Steiger, "Just wait till Friday." He thought nothing of it, and Friday morning, he was called on to perform the last rites of a farmer in the community. He went, and on his way back to Erling, right as he passed over a bridge, it was as if a blindfold fell upon him, and he wrecked his new car, which came to a stop hanging over the edge of the bridge. The pastor managed to crawl away from the wreckage, and when he returned to the convent, the devil and Anna laughed and ridiculed him, and had already told everybody else in the room what had happened. During the months of Anna's stay in the convent, the other occupants were plagued by strange occurrences. The sound of many rats gnawing at the walls while they're trying to sleep, or the sensation of the entire building shaking, like there was an earthquake or there was an enormous train passing nearby. And sometimes in the morning, the father's doors would refuse to open. With every exorcism attempt, Anna would immediately fall unconscious and not wake again until it was over. And afterwards, she would usually wake as herself, unaware of anything that had transpired. But as time passed, Anna had been unable to eat. She couldn't keep any food down, so she had grown very weak and very frail. Her life was sustained only by liquid IV, but she was still somehow vomiting up strange substances, some that resembled ground coffee and others that resembled tobacco leaves. And some days she would vomit up to 30 times. The last exorcism was the worst of them all. It lasted 23 days straight. And finally, on December 23rd, 1928, about 9 p.m., with a sudden jerk of lightning speed, the possessed woman broke the grip of her protectors and stood erect before them. Only her heels were touching the bed. As everyone in the room scrambled to pull her back down, the stiffness in her body suddenly gave way, and she fell back down on the bed. As that happened, a terrible piercing sound filled the room, along with an awful smell. And then it all stopped, and Anna opened her eyes and smiled. The whole room cried tears of joy as the woman thanked God and was finally able to say the name of Jesus. Afterwards, it was reported that Anna's life returned to normal. The details of the exorcism and Anna's ordeal were documented in the pamphlet Begone Satan and was printed in 1935. And while this story is absolutely wild and, let's be honest, a little hard to believe, it is one of the last exorcisms to be officially sanctioned by the Catholic Church, and its records do appear in papal records. The convent and the schoolhouse were eventually torn down, and today only St. Joseph's Church remains. However, the story of the mysterious woman and the exorcist still lives on and still scares the bejesus out of everybody.
Colorado, ski slopes and the gates to hell? You know what? Hell yeah. Just outside Thornton, there's an 11-mile stretch called Riverdale Road. And it looks normal. Quiet, trees, farmland, and a few sharp turns. Locals call it something else. The gates of hell. There's a rusted iron gate set back in the woods. All that's left of a mansion that burned down years ago. The owner vanished and the energy around the property, it never settled. Some say the gate is a portal, others say it's a curse. But what everyone agrees on is that things happen here. People report phantom footsteps sprinting up behind them. A woman in white appears in rearview mirrors and disappears without a sound. There's a black Camaro with one headlight that tailgates cars late at night, then vanishes into thin air. Phones glitch, radios die. Time feels like it stretches or folds. Some think it's haunted. Others, they think this is one of those places where the veil is thin, where something older slips through. And honestly, if the gate's sealed, why does it feel wide open? If stories and topics like this interest you, be sure to give me a follow. I enjoy having these discussions too.
If you think you haven't heard any crazy stories from Fresno, prepare for this one, because there's video evidence. Back in the late 90s/early 2000s, weird sightings of a strange cryptid have been seen around Fresno, California. However, in 2007, a surveillance video caught these strange creatures on camera with really long legs and small heads. I'm gonna be inserting the video in like 2 seconds, so you have been warned. The show Fact or Faked actually did an episode on these creatures to see if they were real or not. These professional paranormal investigators could find no evidence that this was faked in any sort of way. They deemed these creatures to be completely unexplainable, and some people even call them the protectors of the forest. What makes these creatures super eerie is the fact that we don't even know what they stem from, what their origin story is, where they came from, what they are, why they exist. But they do continue to pop up around this area, so if somebody was faking this, they would have to be really persistent. Don't forget to comment your hometown so you can be featured in the next Urban Legends video.
Have you heard of this creepy road filled with cannibal cults members? Apparently it's a colony of them. I was not really thinking much of it until I started researching it more, and I am genuinely creeped out by it. I'm not really one who believes in the supernatural, paranormal, etc. Stick with me because I'm going to explain the lore and why I genuinely find it creepy. This is a place in San Jose, California with a long-standing urban legend that there is an albino cannibal cult colony, whatever, that occupies this stretch of road that goes through the mountain. I don't know why they have to bring up the fact that these members are albino. That seems incidental to me. There's many iterations of this myth, but the myth is generally that if you get too close to these cult members that they will aggressively chase after you. So I looked up the road and seems relatively unsafe to drive, especially at night. And there was one very common recurring story that across all platforms, YouTube, Reddit, even just online San Jose forums, people claimed that a white pickup truck would chase them down if they ventured too far down this road. What stuck out to me is this fork in the road. You go down and take this right, then it gets more and more secluded. I used Google Earth to get a sense of the area. There's clear signs of people living here and not really any clear indicators as to how they are getting here. What someone on YouTube had found is someone listed one of the properties in the area, and in the photos was this man. I don't know the full details. I don't know if this is a squatter, if the original property owner is selling it. Maybe this is a human scarecrow that kind of builds into some of the urban legends around the area. There was a woman who claimed to have lived here in the early 2000s. She said that most of the urban legends, myths, whatever, were blown out of proportion, but she did say that on one night there was a truck that slowly drove by her full of people that looked like they were dressed out of the Great Depression, and they just slowly drove by her as they mean-mugged her and then drove off into the night. She never saw them again. I don't think there's a cult in this area. However, I do think there's probably some things that go on. Me personally, you mix private property with people in California who want to live in secluded areas, I'm good off it. I don't want to go into those parts.
Rhode Island's urban legend is a fascinating one because it might have taken part in the inspiration of the infamous serial killer Freddy Krueger. Fingernail Freddy was a campfire story told throughout Rhode Island. It started in the 1800s when 3 boys were accused of burning a man's house down. The boys admitted to setting fire to the woodpile next to the house, but they didn't think it'd spread that fast. Freddy managed to see the boys running away while he tried to go back in the fire to save his daughter that was still in the house. He was badly burnt in this process, but he managed to survive. Somehow the boys weren't guilty because it was an accident, but Freddy demanded justice for his loss of property and his disfigurement. He threatened to get his own justice on the boys and stormed out of the courtroom. No one saw Freddy for a year, until one of the boys failed to show up for school and was found dead. Within the next months, the other 2 boys who were involved in the fire were found killed. Their throats were ripped open and their bodies clawed apart. Immediately after the boys' death, the townspeople remembered the threat made by Freddy and tried searching for him. They didn't find him until after the burial of the boys. Someone managed to find Freddy sneaking into the remnants of his old home. A half-mad Freddy emerged from his hiding place, still covered in blood, and his fingernails purposely grown long and sharp. He was immediately hanged and left to rot, but someone eventually cut the man down and buried him beside his daughter.
Have you ever heard of the cemetery that disappears when you go looking for it? It's believed by many that Baker Hollow Road Cemetery of Marion, Kentucky vanishes when you drive by it, only to reappear later in a different location, but that's not even the weirdest part of the story. Witnesses have had countless strange encounters in the holler where the cemetery is located. Some people say the weather even changes once you drive onto the wooded road. Rainstorms stop abruptly and a heavy fog sets in. Sounds come from the woods, and shadows can be seen lurking in the trees next to your car. There are reports advising visitors to keep their doors locked and their windows up because if you visit after midnight, something will try to get into your car. Those who have gone to see the place for themselves and experience this phenomenon claim they left the holler with scratches and dents all over their cars. If that isn't spooky enough, the one legend that Baker Holler Road is most known for is the Hellhound. There are stories about how everyone who who goes there sees a big black dog with shining yellow eyes stalking their car. The story goes that if you try to get out and approach this dog, it runs away and eventually vanishes. Some folks believe this black dog is a hellhound. Others think it's a cemetery guardian who lurks nearby when strangers come around to ensure that no one harms the graves of those who are buried in the Baker Cemetery. If you go looking for any of this, be advised, those who have gone before claim their car batteries died and left them stranded there. It might just be best to stay away altogether. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a weird experience at the Baker Hollow Road Cemetery, and don't forget to follow for more spooky stuff.
One of the most haunted roads in Georgia is apparently in Bullock County. Robertson Road is apparently the hub of all things paranormal. This area is full of history. At one point, it was the main line for the Savannah and Statesboro Railroad. Many believe that the haunting started when an accident happened here. Because of equipment failure, a train stopped here in the area. A switchman was walking between train cars and apparently fell in between two of them. The train's crew, unaware of what happened, proceeded. And as the train took off, it took the switchman's head. The crew never realized that the switchman was missing until the crew made their next stop. Only the body from the head down was eventually recovered. And since then, people have reported yellow and orange lights floating around the area. His headless apparition is said to be seen wandering the roads. People have also said to see a black man shoveling dirt across the road. It's said that he was a former slave from the plantation that was nearby. He's usually seen by the remains of a small graveyard. Ghost dogs are also frequently seen digging at the ground. Some think that this is nothing more than a hoax, but there are believers who will tell you that this is absolutely real phenomenon. This urban legend is deeply rooted in the community. What you believe is entirely up to you.
Hello. Giles Corey was a Salem farmer who, along with his wife, was accused of witchcraft in April of 1692. He was 80 years old at the time that he was arrested, and he refused to plead guilty or innocent. I actually went to Salem in May of last year, and I took this picture at the memorial. Salem is super beautiful, and there's tons of historic things to look at, so if you ever have the chance to go, I highly recommend it. But anyway, in an attempt to get Giles to confess, the sheriff had large heavy rocks placed on top of him. Each time Giles was asked to enter a plea, he just replied with more weight. And he endured this torture for 3 days. He ended up dying on the 3rd day, and legend says that right before he took his last breath, he uttered a curse on the sheriff and the town of Salem. It is said that Giles' ghost has been seen in the Howard Street Cemetery before every single major disaster in Salem. For example, it is said that his spirit was spotted in that cemetery the night before the Great Salem Fire in 1914. And the legend also says that the curse has affected every single person that has taken the position of the sheriff of Essex County. Supposedly, every sheriff since Giles' death has either died suddenly or had to resign due to health problems.
Have you guys heard of the Laughing Girl? One of my followers named Aiden, who's from Texas, sent me this story through my Instagram DMs, and y'all, I would literally have a heart attack if I saw her. Aiden told me this encounter happened recently on January 1st of this year, and that if you're from Texas, to be on the lookout for this girl. He told me it all began after a joyful family dinner at his parents' place when he took the wheel at around 10:45 p.m. to drive his family back to their house. On the way back, Aiden and his wife were having a casual conversation, barely listening to the low-volume radio while their 3-year-old son was sleeping peacefully in the back. He told me on their journey home, he reached a part of their ride where there was nothing but fields and grass on both sides of the road. Nothing really out of the ordinary for them, except for the girl they spotted walking all alone along the road. Upon spotting this strange girl, Aiden told me him and his wife stopped talking on the spot, and they were immediately struck with concern as soon as they saw her. He said despite the cooler weather, she had just a scarf on, a tank top, and jean shorts. That was it, and she was not wearing any shoes whatsoever. Aiden told me at first they didn't stop the car and initially passed her since she didn't pay any mind to them anyway. She was busy making movements with her arms as if she was talking to herself while keeping her head down with her not so long blonde hair that was covering the upper part of her face. Now before his wife asked, Aiden did tell me that he did eventually stop the car a few meters away from the girl as he thought that she really needed help. Aiden told me he rolled down the window, peeked outside, and watched as this girl slowly approached the car. He noticed she didn't even look at him once, peeking his head out. She just kept her eyes on the car, specifically the back of the car. That was the moment Aiden told me things took a really dark and terrifying turn. He said he could hear her clearly, and unlike what he thought, she was not talking to herself. Instead, she was laughing hysterically. Without a pause, not a single word, just laughing, while also making these movements with her arms, these movements that looked strange. Aiden described it as not just any laugh too. It was the kind that results from a very good joke or funny scene in a comedy movie. But of course, in the context that they were in, it sounded very bizarre and very manic. Aiden told me he called out to the lady asking if she was okay or if she needed help, but still, no response from her. She was in a world of her own. Aiden told me he ended up thinking that she might have been intoxicated. His wife, on the other hand, heard that manic laugh too and assumed that she might have some mental issues or going through a mental breakdown and suggested that they call the emergency line. However, before they could do so, Aiden told me something strange happened. Their 3-year-old son that was asleep in the back started to chuckle. He told me he remembers both him and his wife looked at their son as his shut lips curled into a smile with his eyes still closed shut. Aiden said he chuckled menacingly, like the overconfident villains in the movies, still sleeping and probably having the dream of his life. His wife ended up calling out to him, trying to wake him up from his sleep. In the meantime, Aiden noticed something much stranger. The laugh of the girl seemed to be patterned, repeating itself like a recorded audio, and soon he noticed the same phenomenon happening to his son's chuckles. He said both him and his wife were so distracted that they didn't even see the mysterious girl arrive at the rear side of his door. As soon as they noticed her, Aiden said his wife went into full mom mode. She wore a fierce look while trembling in unease, dominating her fear and signaling that she was ready to fight for her child. Aiden told me he once again peeked through the window and looked at the lady, asking her one more time if she needed help. That's when Aiden said the girl just stopped laughing all of a sudden. Everything went awfully silent except for their son that was still uncontrollably laughing, still asleep, still eyes closed. He told me the girl bent over, making her head visible through his open window and slowly turned to them, revealing a disturbing smile consisting of a set of rotting teeth covered in blood. But that wasn't it. That wasn't the weird part. Aiden told me he doesn't know if he was hallucinating or seeing things because of how dark it was outside, but he swears on his life this girl or demon had no eyes, no nose, and just a mouth for her to laugh. He remembers his wife screaming in terror, snapping him out of whatever fear that was paralyzing him, and after he literally stomped on the pedal to drive out of there. Aiden told me the girl did not try anything. She didn't even run after them. She just laughed even louder and along with their son, synchronized with him and amused by the fear that she had successfully induced on them. Eventually, when there was enough distance between them and her, and they could no longer hear her laugh or see her, their son stopped laughing. Aiden told me he was sleeping peacefully again, as if nothing had happened. On the ride home, he said it was silent. No discussion of what happened, just silence. Aiden told me even though it's been little over a month since this incident had happened, both him and his wife still cannot help themselves from flinching when they hear a woman's laugh. He told me since his son never woke up from the incident, he doesn't plan on telling him anytime soon, but he did tell me his laugh now sounds strange sometimes. Aiden also wanted me to tell you guys that whether you have had similar experiences or not, just know that there are some really horrific and disturbing things out there. Aiden and his wife still wonder to this day if the laughing girl is still out there waiting for her next victim or waiting for them to ride down that same road again.
Urban legends that ended up being real, part 16. Bus to nowhere. This bus has been spotted in Philadelphia. This mysterious bus is said to appear late at night, offering passage to those who are lost, desperate, or at a crossroads in their lives. But once you board, you are no longer in control of your journey, and there is no telling when or if you will be allowed to leave. One of the most chilling encounters occurred when a man named David was wandering the streets of Philadelphia late one night. He was consumed by despair after losing his job and facing eviction. As he walked aimlessly, he saw an old, worn-out bus pulling up to the curb. Its destination sign was blank and the bus emitted an eerie bluish glow. Feeling a strange compulsion, David stepped aboard. Inside, he found the seats occupied by silent passengers, each staring straight ahead, their faces pale and expressionless. He took a seat at the back and the bus began to move. The ride seemed endless, winding through unfamiliar streets and shadowy alleys. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only minutes. Time had become meaningless. David felt a sense of calm wash over him, but it was mixed with a growing unease. When he finally asked the driver where they were headed, the man turned slowly, revealing empty, hollow eyes beneath the brim of his cap. Panicking, David leapt from his seat and pounded on the door. The driver said nothing, but the bus stopped and the doors creaked open. David stumbled out, finding himself back in the same spot where he'd boarded. The bus vanished into the night, leaving him shaken and forever changed.
Every state has their legends. This one's Montana's. We're going to talk about the Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Want to go for a joyride? Well, if you're in Montana, drive just off of Highway 87 in Cascade County, but stay alert because you might come in contact with a phantom hitchhiker. Because you see, this area is home to what some people call the most aggressive phantom hitchhiker in the United States. Over the years, many people have reported that as they drive down this stretch of road at night, a man will appear to be hitchhiking, but as the car gets closer, he'll suddenly roll over the hood and across the windshield of the vehicle as if he's been struck. When people stop to check, there's no man in sight. He just vanishes, and there's no damage to the cars. The figure has been described as a native man with long black hair and outdated clothes, and many people believe that he was struck and killed by a vehicle many, many years ago. Could this be just overactive imaginations? We may never know, but who's up for a ride?
Back in the early 1900s, one of the most terrifying insane asylums was built. This place is filled with tortured souls, and it lies right on the corner of Edith and Osuna Street. Their medical practices were completely unethical, and their security was not any better. Dr. Samuels, for example, experimented on over 97 patients, leaving their bodies kept in secrecy, hidden away in the basement. There's another story of a patient breaking loose from the guards and killing most of the people in the building, both staff and patients. The institution was later shut down, thankfully, but that did not stop people from trying to sneak in and explore the abandoned remains. But those who were brave enough to explore this abandoned building found that there were black, thick clouds following them, and one person was even mysteriously stabbed in the leg with nobody else in the building. And just a couple years ago, the building was finally torn down for good. But those who walk on the grounds even after it was torn down still experience paranormal activity. Leave your hometown in the comments if you want to be next.
Okay, I had to look this one up as soon as I got home, and this one is wild. This is the urban legend of Haunchyville, Wisconsin. Haunchyville is said to be located in Muskego, Wisconsin, which is in Waukesha County. And I found a few different versions of the origins of this town. Some said that it just randomly showed up one day. Others said that these were circus performers who wanted to get away from the people who were making fun of them. And other people said that it was ostracized little people who needed to have a place of their own. Either way, it is said that this group of little people founded their own mini utopia at the end of a gravel road. If you travel down this gravel road, at the end of it, you would find tiny homes, tiny roads, tiny streetlights, the whole lot. And it is said that they do not like outsiders. So if you do end up here, they will run you out of their town. Another part of this urban legend is that if the townspeople don't run you out of their small town, there is a shotgun-wielding albino man who protects their town, and they will run you out as well. So again, Wisconsinites, is this real? Has anyone in Waukesha County or Muskego seen this? They said that the police do kind of patrol the area as well to give out tickets to anybody who's trying to like snoop. So that kind of makes me a little suspicious too. But let me know what you think.
Hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome back to Scary Tales from the SIP. Today's story takes us all the way down to the oldest settlement on the Mississippi River, Natchez. It's known as one of the most haunted locations in the South, with more than its fair share of paranormal investigations, but none more so than Natchez's infamous King's Tavern. King's Tavern was built in 1769 with all intents and purposes of attracting the river travelers. Invite them in, have them knock a few back, spend a little money, and then sleep it off and leave. But unfortunately, the King's travelers and its unsuspecting tourists also began to attract the likes of the notorious highwaymen, the Natchez Bandits, and this spot in particular became a favorite of the bloodthirsty evil Hart Brothers. And everywhere the Hart Brothers went, there was a trail of bodies. They robbed, assaulted, dismembered, sometimes for no reason at all, just bloodlust. The story was told that while one of the Hart Brothers was there enjoying a beer, a baby started to cry in a room next to him. Walks over, picks the baby up by its legs, and slams the baby's head against the wall, killing it. Gets up, goes back over to the bar, and finishes his beer. Another tale about the King's Tavern. Its owner, Richard King, started having an affair with one of the bartenders named Madeline. Legend has it that out of nowhere that Madeline went missing, never to be seen again. The story was told that Richard's wife found out about Madeline and stabbed her to death. And sometime in the 1930s, when the place was being renovated, they knocked out a brick wall, and guess what was found? The body of Madeline. The murder weapon, a knife, and the skeletal remains of 2 unknown men that were potentially the 2 fishermen that she hired to help her kill Madeline. Over the years, the tavern has closed and reopened. It's been a lot of different things. I think most recently a restaurant. And over this time, there have been pages and pages and pages of stories, experiences from visitors that have been to the King's Tavern and seen apparitions of what looks to be Madeline, the bartender. Bare footprints on freshly mopped floors, jars knocking off the shelves, cabinets slamming, and the mischievous chuckles of a young lady. There have been reports of a baby crying, all of which seemingly innocent, but then there's also reports of a dark, sinister force known as the man with the top hat. Some have reported seeing him and feeling tightness around their throat, their chest, things thrown at them in an aggressive manner. The man wearing a black top hat, his apparition has appeared in the background of photographs. They've seen this man in the window of the rooms and nobody knows who he is. But anyone that's encountered him say that he is an evil spirit, angry, but not fitting the description of the Hart brothers or any of the known bandits that came through the area, or of Richard. Some believe that he was a murder victim. The King's Tavern is officially closed, but I'm pretty sure it's for sale for a price, if you dare.